Judas Iscariot is one of the most infamous symbols of selfish deceit in Western culture. Until modern discoveries like the Gospel of Judas, the disciple has typically been associated with nothing short of pure evil, even being inhabited by Satan according to Luke's Gospel. Yet as some scholars are beginning to suspect, Judas may be a later invention of the Gospel authors. Judas is never mentioned in Paul's epistles, but even beyond this we can see inconsistencies in the number of disciples presented at specific times that points to a possible absence of Judas in the earliest Christian sources. 1 Corinthians 15:3-8 is considered to be an early Christian creed by many apologists, predating even Paul's writings. However, if this is true, it does not come without problems. In the passage we are told that Jesus was raised on the third day according to the Scriptures, and that he appeared to Peter and then to the 12. First of all, note that Peter is not included among the 12 here. In the Synoptic Gospels, Peter is always counted first among the 12, though here he is mentioned outside of the 12, as if he was not a part of it. Of additional concern is the reference to 12 disciples in itself. Excluding Peter from the group would put the number at 11 disciples, but there should actually only be 10 at this point. According to the Gospels, Judas Iscariot had died before Christ's crucifixion, yet his successor, Matthias, was not chosen until after the Ascension. So who were these 12 disciples Jesus appeared to if Peter and Judas were not among them? 12 is a magic number of sorts in the Bible. There are 12 tribes, 12 stones, 12 sons of Jacob, and so on. The significance of having 12 disciples, especially present at important events in Christian lore, should be quite apparent as a symbol of completeness or holiness. The story of 12 disciples may simply be a myth or literary device to emphasize the religious significance of an event. Interestingly, even the Gospels invoke the 12 disciples theme in this way, despite problems that come as a result. In Matthew 19:28, Jesus tells his disciples, including Judas, that they will sit on 12 thrones judging the 12 tribes of Israel. It's unlikely that Jesus, who seemed aware of Judas's intentions to betray him, according to the Gospels, would have included him among the 12 to sit on the thrones. According to the two-source hypothesis in New Testament scholarship, the Gospels of Matthew and Luke both bear elements of influence from Mark's Gospel and from a hypothetical document known as Q. This Q source is thought to be a lost collection of sayings from Jesus, like the Gospel of Thomas. Could this passage in Matthew 19:28 be a remnant of Q, naming 12 disciples to inherit 12 thrones before the Judas story was created? A similar reference to 12 thrones is found in Luke 22:28-30, so we do have a saying common to both Matthew and Luke, yet not found in Mark, which is usually just the type of thing to be attributed to Q. Matthew 28:16 and Luke 24:33 correctly state that 11 disciples remained after Jesus' crucifixion, since Judas had died. However, in John 21:24 we learn that Thomas was the one missing when Jesus appeared to the other disciples. Now, Christian apologists are fond of harmonizing different accounts to wipe away inconsistencies, but in this case it can only make matters worse. Combining all disparate accounts means that both Judas and Thomas were absent from the post-mortem appearances, and Peter was not counted among them if the so-called early Christian creed is accurate, meaning that only 9 disciples witnessed the resurrected Jesus, according to the story. Furthermore, will Judas or Matthias get the 12th throne? And if it's the latter, why did Jesus announce it to his disciples and to Judas without clarifying it? The variant stories on Judas's death will also point to the likelihood of later invention, with the Old Testament used as one source. In Matthew we read that Judas goes and hangs himself. In 2 Samuel 17:23 we read that Ahithophel goes and hangs himself after defecting from David to Absalom and subsequently being rejected by Absalom. David mourns Ahithophel's betrayal in Psalm 41:9, saying, "My close friend whom I trusted, he who shared my bread, has lifted up his heel against me." Does this seem somewhat familiar? It should make one think of the Last Supper, and intriguingly, Jesus even makes the connection in John 13:18. This is to fulfill the scripture, "He who shares my bread has lifted up his heel against me." Luke's story of Judas's intestines spilling out is similar to a passage in 2 Samuel 20:9-10. Joab approaches Amasa, leaning in to kiss him, before stabbing him in the belly and spilling out his guts. The New Testament authors certainly were known to be familiar with the Old Testament, and they even incorporated parts of it into their narratives. The version consistently quoted by these authors is the Greek or Septuagint form, and this is particularly fascinating in light of the fact that Matthew in 2 Samuel 17 use the exact same Greek word for hanging, and Luke in 2 Samuel 20 also use the exact same Greek word for spilling out intestines. It is not clear whether or not Judas was entirely invented, or if his true story was merely buried beneath distortions and fables. But what is clear is that once again biblical literalism will turn up loads of inconsistencies and discrepancies even when applied to such familiar core elements as the betrayal of Jesus and the number of his disciples.